Today's edition of the Three Martini Lunch is brought to you by 4Patriots. Check out their brand new website, 4patriots.com/martini. And one of the things you'll find there, the best-selling survival food kits. Look, we found out during the pandemic, you can't always rely on the supply chain. And who knows what happens if there's an emergency in your area, like a devastating hurricane or a tornado, or in some places even an earthquake. Out in Maui, we saw wildfires not that long ago. You just don't know. So the best-selling survival food kits have delicious tasting foods for breakfast, lunches, and dinners. They come with real meat and vegetables. They're designed to last for 25 years if stored properly. You can also take them on camping trips or picnics, but most of all, they're great in an emergency if the power is out. Just boil water over a fire, simmer and serve, and enjoy hot meals and stay safe in a crisis. Visit 4patriots.com/martini to see this week's discounts and deals before they are gone, and get free shipping on orders over $97. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to the number 4patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini.
Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Corombos of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Very glad to have you with us for the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We don't have any good martinis for you today, so just to set your expectations properly. But here's some good news. Not today, but Thursday is going to be our special debrief from Jim Garrity about his time of more than a week in Taiwan. We've recorded a special looking at the good, the bad, and the crazy elements of his time over there. And of course, how Taiwan is prepping for a potential and eventually likely Chinese military action. But their outlook might be better than you would suspect. So we'll just leave that little teaser for you there, and we'll probably have a little bit more to say about it tomorrow as well. But Jim, as mentioned, no good martinis today, so let's dive right in with the bad. This one is Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, of course, making headlines for a week or two when Chuck Schumer unilaterally dropped the dress code on the Senate floor, which allowed Fetterman to show up and preside over the Senate in a hoodie and gym shorts. Well, they eventually got rid of that by unanimous consent or a voice vote or something like that. So Fetterman has to wear a suit if he's on the floor, but I still assume most of the time he's just shouting from the cloakroom when it's time to vote. However, he has been pretty strong, in fact, quite strong, in defending Israel with his social media comments and otherwise, which led to this curious moment. We're not defending the position of the voter at all here, but the reaction of Fetterman and his staff. This is at some sort of Fetterman event because the man in question here says he bought a ticket for it. So I'm guessing it's some sort of fundraiser. So he comes up to Fetterman and asks him, because it's hard to hear here with the background noise in the bar or the restaurant, wherever they are here. And he wants to know why Fetterman has not taken a stronger stand in demanding humanitarian aid for civilians in Gaza. The Fetterman aide tries to steer the conversation to himself, so Fetterman doesn't have to be part of it. The constituent doesn't fall for that, and then eventually the constituent gets shoved out of the restaurant. So take a listen.
I asked you something. You're supporting a humanitarian ceasefire. No, I'm with the team. If you'd like, I can talk to you. No, I can talk to. I voted for him. I'm sorry, this is a democracy.
It absolutely is.
Yeah, but kind of, sort of. Why? 10,000 people in Gaza have been killed, half are children. The Pope's calling for a ceasefire. The UN has called for it. I'm just asking you. You're a good guy. I voted for you. I know you're a nice guy. This is important.
You need to leave.
Here, can I give you a card?
So I asked the senator a question. You need to leave.
And at that point is when the Fetterman guy, who's curiously dressed a lot like Fetterman in the hoodie,
apparently there's an office dress code.
There is an office dress code. He shoves him out the door from like the middle of the bar area, pushing him like a blocking slut at football practice right outside once this guy wanted an answer to his question and wanted to give him some piece of paperwork. Sorry that the Queen was blasting in the background there with the We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, and whatever else was going on back there. But the idea that you can't talk to the senator made no attempt to answer anything. He just looked at his staffer, basically giving the cue to get rid of this guy. And so a lot of the people on social media and beyond are saying, how dare the Fetterman staff treat a constituent for like this for asking a difficult question? And my reaction, Jim, was, I don't think he can. I don't know. How did you look at it?
Yeah. to use my cliche, there is a lot to unpack here. The first is that after ripping into Fetterman, and I really do think that everybody on the Democratic side belatedly realized that eliminating the Senate dress code was a mistake. We saw how quickly they retreated on this. We saw institutions like the Washington Post editorial board come out and say, this is, at a time when there's already minimal respect for our elected leaders, maybe it's not too much to ask them to dress up for the job. On this podcast, you and I had discussed the fact that, Fetterman had seen C-SPAN before, right? He knew that the job of senator did require wearing suits a lot. But then, last couple of weeks, particularly since the Hamas massacre, Fetterman's been really good on this. And it's almost the living embodiment of that meme from The Onion saying, tragedy, the worst person just made a terrific point. And that Fetterman, for, at least on this issue, had been, exactly what a supporter of Israel would want to see and hear. Now, the thing I kind of in the back of my mind that was nagging at me, especially every time I saw a good tweet that said this, Hamas is ultimately responsible, there is no excuse, there is no justification for this. And Fetterman even took some shots at the those who were attempting to create moral equivalence and the protesters and things like that. There was this attack on a synagogue or a Jewish school out in the Allegheny County, and he denounced it. He was doing all the stuff you wanted to see. But there's a part of me, it's am I seeing... Is Fetterman doing all this, or is this the staff doing all this? How is Fetterman in his ability to communicate? How is he recovering? And the fact that he doesn't say much of anything during that exchange does leave you wondering, was he having trouble communicating at that point? And is that one of the reasons they wanted this interaction with voters to be ended as quickly as possible? Easier if folks could watch the video, and I understand, look, it sounds like it's coming from literally inside the music speaker, blaring Beast of Burden. But there's a point where the guy kind of reaches out and touches Fetterman's arm, and it just seems a little pushy. It seems a little aggressive for the circumstances, particularly when he keeps emphasizing how reasonable he is asking for a ceasefire. By the way, if you're calling for a ceasefire, Israel's got to eliminate Hamas. They cannot continue to exist with this ongoing threat. So if you're calling for a ceasefire, you're saying stop hitting Hamas. That is the context of this. But I don't know. I kind of found, looking back to the Tea Party days where there was a lot of skeptical questioning, shall we say, angry questioning. I don't like it when I see lawmakers trying to avoid their constituents. On the other hand, you do have a certain obligation, as angry as you are, to comport yourself in a certain appropriate manner. And I think you can make the argument, particularly like I said at that part where he kind of touches in the beginning, it just kind of feels a little. Maybe there was fear that this was going to lead to an altercation or something like this. I don't think it's unreasonable for even though I disagree with the constituent's got every right to say, hey, why aren't you supporting a ceasefire? And Fetterman's got every reason to say, I don't support a ceasefire because I think Israel's got to take care of business. It's got to eliminate the threat. It's so something odd here. Something is going a little bit unusual here, and it's not, doesn't make Fetterman look great. So it doesn't make the person asking him look great, doesn't make the staff look great. So kind of bad all around. Again, I just wish we could see, I wish we could see lots of Fetterman so that we could kind of evaluate how he's doing in terms of his physical and, psychological recovery. Like I said, good stuff from him lately. I did not expect myself to be in this situation, and it's really a pleasant surprise to see one of Pennsylvania's two Democratic senators being such a forthright, clear supporter of Israel. In that case, Fetterman, keep it up. But yeah, there's something a little weird about this exchange that indicates it might be, leaves you wondering if Fetterman's recovery is as solid as his supporters would like you to believe.
Very interesting. Now, there's definitely a divide on the left over this issue. Some are strongly supporting Israel. Some, not just the Squad, but certainly the Squad, are cheerleading on the other side. And then, as Inez and I talked last week, the young people are the biggest concern in this country right now, with 50% of people between the ages of 18 and 34 saying Hamas was justified in those attacks. So a lot to unpack there, to use your terminology, in the long term for Democrats and for our nation as a whole. So big question here. But yeah, the fact that Fetterman didn't even attempt to open his mouth there and kind of gave the sign like the old mafioso boss, get rid of this guy, take him outside, not good, not encouraging that he's up to the job.
Hey, y'all, this is Sarah from The Sarah Carter Show. Thanks for listening to 3 Martini Lunch. We all have a heartfelt reason to support our blood pressure. In fact, more than half the U.S. population would benefit from blood pressure support. Superbeets Heart Chews are an easy and convenient way to support healthy blood pressure and promote heart-healthy energy. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Superbeets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. And believe me, I know, because I'm traveling all over the country covering stories and frankly, sometimes all over the world. And it's so easy. I just keep my Superbeets in my handbag, in my pocket, wherever. And I've got amazing energy. And guess what? They taste really good. So supporting healthy blood pressure comes with a bonus. Superbeets Heart Chews support healthy circulation. So you not only get blood pressure support, you also get a productive, heart-healthy energy without the crash. Double your potential with Superbeet Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Superbeet Heart Chews and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using promo code Sarah. That's S-A-R-A. GetSuperBeets.com, code Sarah to get 15% off your first order. GetSuperbeets.com, promo code Sarah.
All right, Jim, on to our second bad martini now. And speaking of Capitol Hill, that incident was not on Capitol Hill, but Chris Wray, the FBI director, was today. And he was testifying about the threat of terrorism against Americans and American interests, both here at home and abroad. And so the comparison he makes here is going to be quite chilling.
We assess that the actions of Hamas and its allies will serve as an inspiration, the likes of which we haven't seen since ISIS launched its so-called caliphate several years ago. In just the past few weeks, multiple foreign terrorist organizations have called for attacks against Americans and the West. Al-Qaeda issued its most specific call to attack the United States in the last 5 years. ISIS urged its followers to target Jewish communities in the United States and Europe. Hezbollah has publicly expressed its support for Hamas and threatened to attack U.S. interests in the Middle East. And we've seen an increase in attacks on U.S. military bases overseas carried out by militia groups backed by Iran. Here in the United States, our most immediate concern is that violent extremists, individuals or small groups, will draw inspiration from the events in the Middle East to carry out attacks against Americans going about their daily lives. That includes not just homegrown violent extremists inspired by a foreign terrorist organization, but also domestic violent extremists targeting Jewish or Muslim communities.
So, Jim, anytime you hear about ISIS-inspired terrorism, your mind immediately goes back to the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando. You think about the San Bernardino terrorist attack, and those are probably the ones with the most casualties, but there were certainly others in this country, mass shootings and so forth. And so the idea that we're headed back to that type of moment in this country is certainly chilling. And so the FBI hopefully is on top of it. Hopefully they're following up on critical leads. I would also point out, though, that you might not have wanted to have a largely open border for the last 3 years when you have no idea who has crossed in. But what strikes you most from that?
Yeah, so I think violent extremism is more likely to flourish when you have a political or ideological environment in which one group is so demonized that they are effectively dehumanized. And the argument is that anything you do to these people is justified because they are so evil. Every now and then, I'm reminded that President George W. Bush, 1 week after the 9/11 attacks, visited a mosque in Washington, D.C., and emphasized to the country, Muslims are not our enemies. Every American has every right, and I think should be, outraged at what Hamas did to all those innocent people about 3 weeks ago. Having said that, unless there is some clear, outspoken, wearing it on their sleeve supporter of Hamas, then, the typical person who is upset at Israel is not the same as Hamas and should not be treated as Hamas. The Muslim family down the street, the guy who's running the convenience store, they're not Hamas. They're not your enemy. They should not be treated that way. And I would argue the moment you start picking on any old Muslim, because you're angry at Hamas or ISIS or Al-Qaeda or any of these groups, you become part of the problem. You are, in fact, punishing innocent people for something they had nothing to do with. On the flip side, we see plenty of people who, when they say, I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm just anti-Zionist, and then they take it out on the nearest Jew available. And that's why, to turn into that Will Ferrell meme from Anchorman, I don't believe you when you say that you're not anti-Semitic, just anti-Zionist, because whenever people get angry at Israel, they don't go to the Israeli consulate or the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., or the UN consulate up in New York City. I mean, some of them do. But a whole bunch of them just go for the nearest Jew. Where's the synagogue? Where's the Jewish community center? Where's the nearest Jewish school? They just want to find somebody Jewish, that'll do, that's close enough, and they'll let out their anger at that person. And I feel like when you have this atmosphere on college campuses and in certain areas where Israel is just the devil, it is just seen as the root of all evil. It is the cause of all the problems in the Middle East. It is the cause of all the problems in the world, that people decide, well, it's okay for me to hit at anything Israeli or anything Jewish because they're the worst. They're the devil. They're the evil. They're evil. And that's what I think is at work here. That once you decide somebody is so bad that there's nothing redeeming about them, it goes beyond contempt to the idea of, we've heard all these, ugly metaphors of Jews as parasites, Jews as insects, et cetera, that gets into people's minds. And they decide, it's not enough for me to wave a sign and attend a protest and to laugh when somebody at that Times Square rally jokes about killing hipsters in the desert. They decide they got to go one step further. And whether it means spray painting swastikas on synagogues or whether it's leaving pipe bombs, leaving verbal threats. We saw one up at Cornell. This is like, well, I'm doing this because I'm doing the right thing. I am the hero in this story because I'm fighting those evil Jews. That is what is going on here. So I'm glad Wray is on the case. You and I have been infamously critical of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the degree to which so many times we've had mass shooters and other terrorists that have slipped through the cracks, in which there's been some sort of warning, some sort of red flag, and nothing gets done on this. I hope Wray is on this, but I also can't help but feel like a portion of what is driving this is the degree to which the demonization of Israel is now just standard issue on so many college campuses. And it creates an environment where these young, angry people looking for some way to let out their frustration on the world have a politically and, in their minds, socially and morally acceptable enemy who they can take out all their frustrations on and earn social applause and approval of their peers.
Yeah, you make a good point about how they claim oftentimes that they're opposed to Israeli government policy, but it doesn't end up being carried out that way. I mean, I'm pretty sure the students at Cooper Union last week weren't making Israeli policy when they had to be barricaded in the library because the pro-Hamas protesters were banging on the door and screaming. There was another story this week of a couple of students who had to basically hide in a campus building at the University of Wisconsin. You mentioned Cornell, and Scott and I went through a lot of different protests on campus last week where people were saying Israel shouldn't exist and their supporters shouldn't exist, and it's not too hard to read between the lines there. Jim, I don't know how you turn this around. I mean, now we know exactly where a lot of these people stand. The question is, what do you do about it?
Well, first of all, on these college campuses, there are Jewish students who are being terrorized. But I'd like to think that everybody who's either a Jewish student or who knows a Jewish student and cares about the well-being of those Jewish students, that when you hear somebody going around and saying, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, at the minimum, just go and say, where does Israel go in your vision? Where what happens to the Israelis? And if the answer is they get turn to the sea, you can turn around and say, you are a bleeping anti-Semite. I'm not saying you should go out and punch these people. I'm just going to observe that when somebody sounds like a Nazi and acts like a Nazi, you're entitled to call them a Nazi. And the irony is we've lived in an era for like the last 30 years. Anybody to the right of Larry Hogan got called a Nazi. But now we've got people running around chanting, kill the Jews. No, those folks aren't Nazis. No. That's just anti-Zionism. No, that's horsepucky. And it's time to call it out, and it's time to stand up to it and to say no. The Babylon Bee has this, like Babylon Bee is funny, but like sometimes it almost makes you want to cry because it's so accurate. And there's this, woman at I Hate the Jews rally says she would stand up to the Nazis in 1939. I mean, that guy, right? This is the dynamic here. I was just discussing with some of my colleagues on the Editors podcast. For the last 3 weeks, you've had a lot of people who have always said, how could Germans have gone so insane in the 1930s? How could they have bought into this idea that the small minority of Jews that lived in their society were the root of all evil and the root of all their problems, and that Jews controlled everything, and that they were justified in rounding them up and sending them off to camps? And now you look at our campus like, oh, okay, that's how it happened. That makes sense. All right, now I get it, because that's not that different from the mentality we're seeing here. Now, America in 2023 is not quite as far gone as Germany in the 1930s. But we got some problems. And part of it is on college campuses, this unhinged, frothing at the mouth, knee-jerk belief that Israel is the root of all evil and has no right to exist has morphed into, functionally pro-genocidal attitudes. And, how do you stop it? You stand up and you say, no, that's wrong. And you get enough people to say, no, that's wrong. You remind these people that not only are they wrong, not only are they echoing an ancient evil, that they are also the minority. There are more of us than there are of them. We just have to speak up and let them know. That's one of the reasons I went to the JCC, I'm going to say the Thursday after the initial attacks out there. Those of us, look, the Jews, I understand when every Jew says we can't count on anybody else, we have to stand up for ourselves. As a Gentile, I'm here to tell you, you shouldn't have to. We should be standing up with you to say, no. You guys might be different from us, might worship a different God, might look at the world differently than us, but you've got every right to exist. First of all, here in the United States, you have every right the same rights as every other American. And Jews have been here since the beginning. Go back and read about Haim Sullivan and how he supported the Revolutionary War movement. George Washington and the revolutionaries were broke. And basically some Jewish merchants came up and said, hey, you know what? We're going to help finance you. They end up dying penniless. Like, it did not work out well for them. But they literally put their money where their mouth is. And that's one of the reasons we ended up being an independent country today. So stand up and say, no, you're wrong. And I think a whole bunch of these people have never been we know they're snowflakes. We know they crumple in the face of any sustained opposition. So this is our opportunity to stand up and to, treat them like the snowflakes that they are. And if they get violent, well, that's a job for law enforcement. And hey, NYPD, you want to step up a bit? You want to hang around Cooper Union, remind these kids that there's laws that they have to obey? Oh, that's right. We're not in the policing business anymore, are we?
Hey, y'all, this is Sarah from The Sarah Carter Show. Thanks for listening to 3 Martini Lunch. What happens when we die? From Angel Studios, the force behind Sound of Freedom and The Chosen, comes an unprecedented deep dive into the phenomena of near-death experiences in the new movie, After Death. After Death makes a courageous venture into a hotly debated, mysterious subject by comparing near-death experience with cutting-edge scientific knowledge. Hear from experts in the fields of science, philosophy, and medicine, as well as firsthand experiences of people who have lived through death as they paint a fascinating picture of life in the next realm. This groundbreaking project responds to the soul's innate desire to find meaning in life and solace in the future. Come see it for yourself or pay it forward by providing a free ticket for others to see the film. Leave your preconceptions at the door and prepare for a never-before-seen glimpse into what the next life could entail in After Death, opening October 27th. Get your tickets today or pay it forward at angel.com/3martini-lunch. That's angel.com/3martini-lunch. After Death, the end is only the beginning. Rated PG-13.
All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now. And given the seriousness of the last couple of issues, we need a little relaxing this time. But it just goes to show also how maddeningly unfair the media are when it comes to people they don't like in the political realm. There are huge issues to deal with right now. We've got multiple wars going on around the world. We've got American families struggling mightily to make ends meet as inflation continues to plague us in a number of different ways. We just talked before you left about how it's $1,000 more per month to buy a $400,000 house on a 30-year mortgage than just 2 years ago. People are struggling. There are major issues. But for Politico, no. Those have to sit on the sidelines while we figure out whether Ron DeSantis is putting lifts in his cowboy boots. And why is he wearing cowboy boots anyway? What's up with that? Well, they hired some guy who has written for the Washington Post, Financial Times, and Esquire, who is a menswear writer named Derek Guy. So this guy goes into a very long article about how height is important in campaigns, and people generally like the taller candidate, and DeSantis is at least 4 inches shorter than Trump, but they're never on a debate stage. Who cares? But my favorite part of this whole thing, as he goes into why he probably is putting lifts into his boots, it's like this Zapruder film-like still shot with different circles of Ron DeSantis's right foot in the boot, showing that, there's an unusually high wrinkle in the boot. Oh, over here we got the leather appearing to stretch, further suggesting a lifted heel. DeSantis's foot over here seems to end, causing the toe of the boot to curl upward. Oh, and finally, this knot comes from the joint of the base of DeSantis's big toe sticking out. Jim, could we get some investigative reporting on, I don't know, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, or people actually care about some of this stuff, how college campuses got this insane, or something that matters? Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So my first thought was I really would like to call out to Politico and the editors and say, hey, slow news week, guys. Anything else going on? News speaker, ticking, clock on government shutdown and Israel, Russia, Ukraine, Taiwan, the border, any of that stuff? No, we got to go on to the Ron DeSantis height booster. What's in Ron DeSantis's boots? And my next question would be to Derek Guy. Did you send this clip home to mom? Was this proud? That's one you print out and hang up on the wall, right? Because the Pulitzer Committee's been notified, right? Because this is something we got to get down to. I was thinking this. So there was a Washington Post columnist who wrote about fashion, and this was kind of her beat. I believe it was Robin Given, I want to say. Let me just double check.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. And she won the Pulitzer, by the way, for commentary. But this was back 2 decades, and she decided that she was going to write about political figures, kind of as if they were fashion designers and their sartorial choices and how did they dress and what was the symbolism. And I remember she really ripped into John Roberts' wife and kids for the way they dress. And it was just unsurprisingly, every Democrat was dashing and handsome and stylish and terrific, and every fashion choice of every Republican revealed that they were repressed and terrible and Nazis inside. So it was always unsurprisingly partisan in their take. But I also felt this kind of journalism made people dumber, because in the end, first of all, by today's standards, Abraham Lincoln was pretty funny looking, pretty odd, beard but no mustache, the big tall hat. He was, but in the end, we have limited ability to control our appearance, and we try to improve. We try to make the most of our appearance. I understand appearances count in this world, but I also don't think it's particularly good to judge people over something they don't have, they have only limited amount of control over. You look the way you look. If you're lucky, you're handsome. If you're not, you are what you are. But I don't really think, particularly in the realm of politics and government, that matters that much. That really what matters is what's going on between your ears. The decision-making matters. The values matter. What policies do you want to enact and what they would do. That is really what we should be discussing. And also in terms of whether you want to be a Supreme Court judge or whether you want to be president, you want to be a senator or a congressman or somebody in the cabinet. That's really what matters. People joke that, politics was Hollywood for ugly people. But the point of it was the people in politics were ugly because they weren't selected to be handsome or beautiful the way movie stars were. They'd actually spent their time. We spent, those of us in politics, look, Greg, you're a handsome man. Let's just get that out of the way. But we spend our time trying to know things, trying to understand the world, trying to be able to explain it to others, try to find solutions to problems and articulate why these solutions would be good. And if you're doing all that, you probably don't have nearly as much time to focus on being the most beautiful, handsome, perfectly in shape, embodiment of masculine or feminine beauty that you could possibly be. And that's okay. We're not supposed to be that way. When you decide to judge people by stupid, superficial criteria, you end up with stupid, superficial people in government. government is not meant to be TikTok. Government is not meant to be, hey, pretty people, you get everything else in this world. Can those of us who want to use our brains, can we have politics? Can we have government? Is this the one thing we're allowed to have for ourselves? So anyway, that's what people have decided, that the most important thing you need to know about Ron DeSantis is that maybe he's not as tall as he'd like people to believe, and there's something in his cowboy boots. I don't care if he's wearing cowboy. Remember, that DeSantis did that inspection of places after the hurricane, and he was wearing the big, goofy white rubber boots because I think FEMA had given him. And look at those silly. Well, he's inspecting a hurricane site. What the hell's wrong with you people? So anyway, that's where we are, and I just want to thank Politico for their contribution to the dumbing down of America, for evaluating candidates on ever more shallow criteria, and not bothering to care about things like, policies, which is what the job of the presidency is actually supposed to be about.
Very well said. Yeah, the double standard, even on the aesthetic front, has been there a long time. I remember in 2016, I can't remember if it was at the convention or somewhere else, Melania Trump wore white, and that was the greatest fashion sin of all time. Hillary does her acceptance speech in white. Oh, what a bold and visionary choice that was. Catherine Harris, if we're going way back, she was Cruella de Vil because they didn't like her makeup, but that was because she was a Republican. Jill Biden, if you called her Lady Macbeth, you were the worst person in the world, but Casey DeSantis, totally Lady Macbeth. So the double standard's just everywhere in our media, and it all depends on whether you got an R or a D next to your name. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, Jim, have a good day. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Thank you also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Tuesday and join us again on Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.